When you're lost in the darkness, look for the ClickerCast. Welcome back, everyone, to our very special limited run series here at GamerGuild TV, where we'll be breaking down each and every single episode of HBO's The Last of Us, from its plot to its characters, the video game comparisons, and every spore-sized detail in between. Every Wednesday, we go live here on the channel. So get your comments in, jump in, submit your questions. Of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that bell so you're kept in the loop with all the other great content we do here on the channel, like these very shows, like our weekly live streams, and more importantly, the GamerGuild Podcast, our weekly gaming roundup, where we talk about all the news falling into the game industry out there in the wild. But if you're into The Last of Us and that's what's brought you here, we do have a full entire playthrough of Part 1 and Part 2 on PlayStation 5 available for your viewing pleasure whenever you so fancy. And of course, if you are catching up on the show, we have an entire breakdown of Season 1 where myself and my lovely co-host broke that all down. Your hosts for the week are always myself, Chris, at Arcane Rogue, and the brick to my bottle, my fellow co-host, Mr. Richie.
Hello, everyone.
Hello indeed. Episode 5, Richie. We're here. We're past the midway point now. Episode title, Feel Her Love, directed this week by Stephen Williams, who is most popularly known for probably Watchmen of late and Lost back in the day. Did quite a few episodes of Lost, which was... in my mind, I always think Lost is like one of the biggest like pop cultural movements in TV when we were younger. You know, like when people really start talking about a show week to week to week. I don't know if you recall, but I remember in secondary school, like people would get the Zoo and Nuts magazines, not just for the pictures, but they would also get it because it had like theories and breakdown. This is like obviously pre-internet, so like you didn't have that viral discussion, but that's the closest thing I remember to being a child of like, you need to watch this show every single week or you are going to miss out on the plot twists, the narrative changes. And it's interesting how it's evolved to where we're at today with the internet, for better or for worse.
And to this day, I have still never seen an episode.
I'd say it's worth a watch, but then at the same time, it is a good chunk of seasons.
Wasn't it something like on Sky One back in the day?
Yeah, it was one of like the first original shows that made its way over to here.
I think we had like NTL, but this was before Sky One was just default on
Standard,
the package.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we didn't have any of the Sky ones when it came out, so I just had to listen to you talk about endlessly.
Well, it happens. And just like everyone here in our audience is here for us to talk endlessly about this week's episode. So yes, Stephen Williams directed it. Writers, of course, the usual culprits, Neil Druckmann, Haley Wegner-Gross, and Craig Mazin. And music, of course, by the wonderful Gustavo Santaolalla once again. The plot summary for this week's episode is the WLF make a dangerous discovery at great cost. Later, Ellie must decide whether to continue with her plan and risk putting Dina in danger or give up on her quest for justice. We always like to start every single show by digging a little bit deeper into just what our overall thoughts were on this week's show, Richie. So to start off with then, first impressions on this week's episode?
I was wondering where they were going to go, because a big section of the episode, again, is quite a bit of a departure from the game. But still, again, I think they're still nailing it. Week in, week out, I think it is just good quality television. As long as you do not need it to be a one-to-one faithful adaptation of the games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Which I don't think it needs to be personally, so I'm more than happy with what I'm seeing. But I have started seeing a lot of memes online, things starting to turn a bit toxic. And it's just like, dude, it's a game. There's scope, play the game if you don't like the TV show.
Yeah,
no one's taking that experience away from you.
Yeah, there's regular stuff I see week to week when I do my research for this show, of like listening to the official podcast, listening to a couple of other channels, kind of just break it down, do the video game comparisons. And it's like people in week 5 of season 2, so you've watched potentially 15 episodes of the show at this point. If you're not enjoying it, if it isn't a faithful adaptation as you so wish, don't watch it. Go watch Lost.
Yeah.
Because that's not derived from a video game. I'm sure Lost will leave you fully satisfied near the end after several plot twists. But yeah, similar echoed. I think it's again just quality television, great character development and movement. There are parts, I think, halfway through this episode where I found myself checking my gaming comparisons a little bit, thinking we should be further along at this point. We should have spent more time with these characters at this point. But this is where I keep having to suspend, I guess, my thought process and trust in Craig and Neil and the rest of the team to make this for a different medium. And I think that's where you need that, not higher level of thinking, but be willing to understand that this isn't going to be a one-to-one adaptation. And I think we've came to realize that over the last several years, and loving the games the way we do. But you're right, the internet isn't quite as fair thoughted as that.
I feel like as well in this season of the show compared to the game, Ellie's arc is moving a bit slower.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the end of this episode is finally getting to the Ellie that we know from Last of Us Part 2, the video game.
Yeah. There's
been the obsession. I feel like the end of this episode, she has crossed that line now. She has made the decision where running up to it, it still feels like she could have actually turned round and left. Like when she's talking to Dina, she's like, should we go back? Well, she says, I can take you back. But part of me thinks that Ellie, if she did turn around and go back, would she turn around to come back to Seattle again?
Yeah, it's a long
Where
long
the
time.
Ellie at the end of the episode, I don't think would even take Dina back.
Yeah, she's committed. It's that conviction of, I think Gail mentioned it when she was talking about Tommy, saying like her and Joel were walking similar paths but more side by side, and that kind of determination Joel had is definitely here at the end of this episode. But I would agree, and this is where, as a story told in a different medium, in the game as Ellie, you've killed like 100+ people now between the first game and the second game. You've killed probably many wolf soldiers, possibly a few scars, and at this point in the show, Ellie's really done it out of the necessity for survival. She's not actively gone out and hunted people down. And as we get to Nora in this episode, she kind of releases that call back to Joel, which happened months ago at this point.
Well, yeah, and it's also the relationship with Dina. The relationship with Dina in the game happens in Jackson, and then it starts fracturing while they're in Seattle. Yeah. They've just got together.
Yeah.
So the tension between Ellie and Dina is going to start building from this point.
100%.
I feel like they've made the decision over the course of season 2 to build out the relationship and probably break it down over the course of season 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they said that on last week's official podcast of like the great thing with the shows they've been writing it, knowing fine well that they were going to be signed off for season 3. I'm sure the higher ups at HBO give them all that confidence. There's no way it was just going to get cancelled at the end of the season for whatever reason. It's HBO's highest viewing show, higher than Game of Thrones, so that's a shoo-in for a guaranteed follow-up. And having that plot mapped out in that way has been able to, obviously, anything they've tweaked and edited and kept back or put a pin in it for later on, they've got that full course mapped out better than anyone else would. So
I feel as well like by this point, by the time that Ellie gets to Nora in the game, you've probably spent about 15 hours hanging out with Dina.
Yeah,
we're on 3 or 4 hours probably in TV.
Yeah, in TV
of
terms.
Time spent with Dina. So in the game, you've had a lot more time with Ellie and Dina as working together, because from the whole open world section, really, as a couple and that relationship, cementing it. So you can start fracturing it earlier in terms of when things happen. But it's first blood to Ellie now.
Certainly is. Well, it depends if we count Joel. Let's get into the thick of it then. Let's start with the plot. So the episode opens up on the character we met previously with Isaac's flashback. This is the character known as Hanrahan, who's played by Alana Eubank. She kind of rocks up in the middle of the hospital. We see her basically walking quite determinedly down through a hospital corridor. We see tons of soldiers, fellow, I guess, wolves, kind of stood looking a bit reserved about her presence, almost like, when the Emperor rocks up in Star Wars and everyone's like, right, everyone straight back, get like, don't mess up here, don't talk, don't say anything, don't even make eye contact. She's clearly a high up lieutenant or something in this kind of military setup. She makes her way down along, and we see her go past a concealed basement doorway, which is absolutely welded shut, Richie.
Very, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, not just like your typical cartoon boards and nails. This has got like welded girders holding this thing in place. So who knows what's behind that? But then she makes her way into an office, and we see a visibly shaken soldier. They set the tone, almost like something serious has definitely happened here. Yeah. We see Hanrahan, kind of take a seat alongside this other woman, visibly shaken. She's smoking a cigarette. She's got that kind of like twitch in her hand in her eyes. And the two basically talk about potentially killing her. And she determinedly says like, yeah, Isaac would have came down and executed me himself if it was that important. So again, she might be visibly shaken, but she's not unaware of what's really playing out.
She was expecting Isaac to come and pretty much give her a death sentence because she killed her own soldiers.
Yeah. Which you've got to imagine the events that like we soon see transpire is like, some shit's gone off and she's lost maybe her whole platoon, which from a military standpoint, you can see maybe as Isaac going, what do you mean you've lost a whole platoon of soldiers? They were like some of our best men. Like you don't know the full backstory, but clearly it was important. And her being in charge of this decision, we see it in time and time again, moves and shows. It's whoever's in charge takes the fall, and then they just replace them with the next person in line. But either way, she goes on to explain that there was a shooting between some scars. The treaty might be broken, which we know is very, very important. The kind of the armistice that we had between the scars and the WLF. We don't really see much of it in the show, but we know it was there.
So do we feel this is a little bit of a flashback? It doesn't say it is, but this isn't happening at the same time we've seen with Ellie and Dina.
So yeah, this is one of the things that I think the show is trying to subvert our expectations a little bit. And what I don't understand is this Hanrahan character who, again, is not in the game. Her purpose that she's playing now, I don't understand why Isaac isn't just doing all these parts. Like, I know they give him a reason here, and this is what makes me think this all happened a long time prior to Ellie and Dina showing up in Seattle. And I just, there's still that feeling in my mind that this Hanrahan character looks so much like this prophet. I'm just waiting for that twist of like, oh shit, you mean that was her?
Yeah, I can see it going that way. I'm thinking is, in the game you read the notes and you kind of hear how Isaac takes over the WLF.
Yeah.
At this point, I feel like she is the de facto leader and Isaac's like a lieutenant, second in command.
Yeah.
So, but by the time Ellie and Dina get to Seattle, Isaac's in charge.
Yeah. So something has to happen.
If the treaty, I feel like what we're about to hear about, I think this is why I feel like being in the past, Isaac's dealing with the first time the treaty is being broken, which will lead to a massive conflict between the WLF and the Seraphites, in which Hanrahan will get killed.
Yeah.
I think that's why they've established her character. She's a stepping stone character for Isaac to step beyond.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got in my mind she's almost like made into a martyr. She tries to broker a peace and says like we can't keep killing each other, but she ends up dying. Therefore,
she ends up getting cut down, which solidifies
the wolves,
Isaac's
the wolves split. Isaac uses that as a scapegoat to say, right, they've killed one of our leaders. We hit them, and the scars are like maybe like we didn't kill her. She's like the innocent one and all this. She represents the prophet. I'm not sure.
Liberated her.
Yeah, freed her from herself or something. But
probably some way to see them free someone else later in the episode.
There's certainly more to this character, and her purpose in the show is a bit shrouded in mystery at the moment. But back to the two ladies talking. Yeah, they both talk about what happened, the events that led to killing her own soldiers. She goes on to talk about, as I said, the treaty being broken. Before saying about like your own men died who went down there, and she kind of recounts what they were doing. She says that their job was to take the hospital, clear it. They went down the levels. They figured there would be some infected down there, as you can imagine, in old abandoned buildings. They say,
ground floor and up, there was a few scatterings of infected with nothing too much.
Yeah, they
started working down.
They refer to the hospital having the original cordyceps, like Patient Zero, taken back in 2003. Which again, we know from the first game, the first season, is like, naturally, people start getting sick, they get taken to the hospital. So in an apocalypse like this, you don't really want to go near a hospital.
Sorry, did you always take that as ground zero for how the cordyceps broke out in America, or just Seattle? Because I always thought that was just ground zero for Seattle.
Yeah, I just figured it was like each area in the country had its own, like the first one to show symptoms. If in the show where everything was transmitted through like the flower, I'd imagine it was just wherever this flower was distributed.
It could be both.
Yeah, it could be.
Cordyceps could have started in Seattle, in America.
This is what's interesting with The Last of Us. Is like one day I would love to see this world play out in a different country. a different time period, like maybe
I'd even
closer
just
to the
take
breakout.
I'd just even take a prequel.
Yeah.
Something set in like the Boston QZ or something. And just with the Firefly, I would just do the Fireflies. That's my pitch.
I mean, if Naughty Dog want to really get away from all the woke agenda that they supposedly get tarnished with all the time, they could just put out a game that was a prequel with Tommy and Joel going about doing some badass shit in Boston 10 years prior, and it would sell gangbusters. But that's not Naughty Dog's tact, is it?
No,
so anyway,
just like to explore characters and try and make them interesting and not one note.
Storytelling. So speaking of storytelling, we learned that B1 was where the first cordyceps went. B2 and B3, the whole floor was empty. Not even rats, which could be a very important nod to something we might see later in the series. She says that, she radioed across to Leon, who was her best soldier. Leon radios through and says, like, he sounds like he's been coughing. She asked him if he's been bit. He says, it's in the air, seal us in. And then that's where we kind of get that. I think the tone shifts in that moment. You kind of see it in Hanrahan's face of like, this is like next level, oh shit. Like, yes, they can deal with infected. Yes, they can deal with scars. But I think in the post-apocalypse, everyone always forgets about the main threat. It happened in The Walking Dead. Everyone forgets about the zombies after a while. They just become normal and manageable. Whereas actually these cordyceps, they're not going to stop evolving.
I think it's a smart thing they've done by holding back the spores till now. Now it's an evolution of cordyceps that we haven't seen before in this world, which means that she's shaken because they haven't experienced this before.
How do you deal with it?
No one is, at least in Seattle, they haven't encountered airborne spores that pass the infection along.
And it's a lot easier to breathe something in than be attacked. Like, that's something by the time you even notice it, it's too late.
So obviously the decision she has to make to seal their soldiers in, including Leon, it's going to shake her. But I think it's also just we've just discovered something this could be it. We're barely clinging on as a species, and now it's got another wave spreading. Yeah,
a virtually invisible wave spreading as well.
Yeah,
and it almost harks back too realistically to obviously our time during lockdown as well. And how, like, we remember on the news, right? How easy it was to just, it's in China. And then all of a sudden, Italy was having problems with it. And then Central Europe was. And then you blink and a couple of flights in and out of a couple of countries. And it's now in the UK. And then a couple of weeks later, it's like, right, we're all shut down. Can't go to work. Can't go shopping. Can't see your family and friends. Stay at home. And it was like, and masks became a thing. It's mad how, like, we've weirdly enough lived through a pre-version of The Last of Us, thankfully without the not brain eating, like the clickers and the infected and ripping people apart. But not to say it didn't come with its own problems. This part being sealed in, it ends with kind of Hanrahan saying like she was a hero, you did the right thing. She does note that they're not going to tell anyone if it's not relevant. So they're very much keeping this under wraps, which I guess is an anti-fear tactic from leadership.
Yeah.
To like, everyone deserves to know, but at the same time, you don't want to cause too much panic.
Yeah, this is the thing where sometimes it's the burden of leadership. It's like, you need to make a decision. Who do you tell? Yeah. She says it's going to be a need to know, but is not a bit arrogant of her to decide who needs to know. Yeah. In some ways, there's an interesting, I think, character study there is because she's doing it not to cause panic and to keep control of a very delicate situation. Yeah.
And she does say
but then she's also not giving people the information they need if they go into another building, go down in the basement. If they know about it, they're more cautious in approaching that. And I feel this could bite her in the ass.
Yeah, and it goes back to a point of saying the hospital's an asset we can't afford to lose. So she's willing to risk this infecting more of her team because the hospital's an important asset to the war against the scars.
You've actually saw how well it was sealed in. And Park, that she's talking to, Park, also mentions that it can't be in the ventilation system because otherwise we'd all be infected.
Yeah, it's yet to go up the ventilation shaft.
Again, I feel like that could be foreshadowing.
Risky. And then she goes to leave the room, and then before she turns back and delivers that kind of one telling blow of, I'm sorry about your son. and it cuts to black, and it's like it's that moment you're like, oh, like that very cleverly written scene of like, we know Leon was important to her, we know she said he was her best man, which is like, all right, I just thought he was her best soldier. Like, I knew he was more important, but you kind of don't realize. And then I guess in hindsight, it's like Hanrahan's response to learning Leon was part of it, I guess, emphasizes her decision as a leader to seal them in. Like, that decision would have been so much more important and difficult knowing it was her son.
It parallels Joel's decision.
Yeah.
To save Ellie.
Yeah.
Hanrahan made the decision for the good of humanity, potentially. Joel made the decision for the good of basically Joel.
Her decision taken away a little bit, though, because he was infected either way. Ellie wasn't going to necessarily die. But I can see the parallels.
Yeah. But it's also, if you've ever worked with someone you're related to or friends with, you kind of have to have almost this like dual-tiered relationship where when you're in work, you have to remain in work mode. You can acknowledge the other part of your relationship, but when she's at work, her son isn't her son. He's a subordinate.
Yeah.
He's one of her soldiers. So when she's making that decision to seal them in, it's not the mother making the decision, it's the superior officer. And then, so I think that's, again, with the conversation with Hanrahan, that's how I feel that it plays out. It's like, right, we're going to do the business talk first. Business talk is done. You're a hero. My condolences on the personal level. Like,
and it doesn't get
it's harsh, but how else do you play that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, they said in the official podcast this week, originally when they made the game, this was a version of Tess's backstory where Tess had a husband and a son, and they got infected through spores, and she had to essentially lock them in the basement. I think we spoke about it on season 1 of this show, actually, during Tess's storyline in episode 2, that she'd experienced trauma and everything that led her to being quite a good parallel for Joel's character in those early episodes. And her leaving her husband and son locked in that basement back at home. And that's why Ellie being a potential cure was so important for Tess, because she was clinging on to that shred of hope that if there was a cure, her son and her husband might have a chance still, even though this probably happened years and years prior. They're locked in a basement somewhere in the deep south of America. But you can see how humanity still clings to that hope. Is it a side to that, Richie? If you get infected as a child, if you're like a little baby clicker, do you still grow up to be an adult? Or does the cordyceps, do you think, lock you into that state and you just remain a child forever? You know what I mean? Does the cordyceps, like, your body's taken over by them? Do you just live forever now as long as the cordyceps is growing? Like, does a bloater live till they're 100, 200? Like, will they be the last of us?
I feel this is where they take over some systems. That's why things like bloaters probably exist, because cordyceps your biology is not functioning as it's meant to, which is probably why you see these weird evolutions of basically runners. Because runners and clickers are fairly self-evident. Yeah. Runner, first stage infection, it's just took over. It's very primal instinct stuff. Clickers, it's evolved to take over the full head and the brain. So it's taken, but then it's already in evolution because it's now working on sonar. So it's very much adapting to its surroundings. So I don't know if you'd grow up from a child to an adult. Yeah. In the classical way, I think you probably grow from a child to a stalker. Yeah.
So all stalkers might be children.
And eventually, as the cordyceps finally takes over, you become a wall.
Yeah, it looks like that. And I guess that goes to a great point of what we learned from the spores in this episode, is that these spores couldn't really evolve to be airborne without human lungs and our respiratory system. So it's interesting how, they take over us as a host, but if we didn't have the feature of lungs, you couldn't sit there breathing this stuff out because they wouldn't have the ability to actually create them in that traditional sense. So
it's very reactive to its environment, I think, cordyceps in this show.
Yeah.
Which it's is underground, and there's no effectively food source. You eventually become a wall, part of the wall, giving off spores to spread it that way. Absolutely.
But the general gist, Richie, is avoid B1, B2, and B3 of this hospispittal.
B1's fine. B1's fine. It's B2 and B3.
Well, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near
down to B3. So B1 was no rats. B2 was spores. B3 didn't even get there.
Ooh. We might be back. We might be back. We then cut to the opening credits. We get the usual fantastic Last of Us opening CGI scene. We then join up with a theatre HQ where Dina is sieving through wolf chatter on the radio that they stole last week, and she is triangulating certain locations of interest and certain patrol routes of the wolves, the soldiers out there. And Ellie comes in and just gives her a little bit of banter about Ellie not being great at maths. She wasn't great back in school, and we actually know that from season 1 where she just sucked at Fedra school. She didn't like joining in. She was good at the physical stuff, but her and Riley were just like having a laugh, basically. And she has that really funny little joke, doesn't she, about, oh, I've brought a protractor? She's like, really? It's like, no. Why would I bring a protractor with me? Along to it. Dina's kind of drawn it out, and it makes sense. They have a little bit of conversation later on about the wolves and their radio.
Which I thought was, and again, that's quite interesting because it goes into the relationship between the wolves and the Seraphites. The wolves are so very open with the radio communications because the Seraphites aren't listening in because they shun technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a nice detail that in the game you kind of find out through environmental storytelling. You learn about all like the wooden thatch roofs and the ladders and the bow and arrow stuff and they use fire instead of like torches and bulbs. And it was a nice touch on that.
And right now, that's an advantage Ellie and Dina have. But I feel, again, this could be... I can see Isaac using this against them down the line. Once the wolves realise there's a third faction at play now. Mm-hmm. And they're listening in.
Yeah. Well, how easy would you have to bait them in? They're after Abby. Just radio across. Abby, we're meeting at the marina. We'll see you down there in like end of tomorrow at noon. Ellie hears that and goes, oh, okay, let's head to this place at noon. And then you jumped. Absolute
You can
trap.
see like Isaac over the radio going, Abby's moving down to the aquarium, puts down the radio, and Abby stood there watching them.
Yeah.
Like that kind of scene play out.
Yeah, you could see it. And again, Isaac's probably got a whole comms team tracking Scar movements.
Yeah.
He's literally looking, I think on the last week's episode when he was torturing that guy, he was asking where the next attack's going to come from. So they clearly have like this whole area of Seattle mapped out. They're doing patrols. They've got searchlights. So very, very interesting. We learn Ellie and Dina have got kind of a little catch-up, I guess. This is the same day after they've woke up together after their intimate moment last week's episode. So there's still very like butterflies in the stomach, flirty eye contact kind of thing. Ellie says like, yeah, you're going to get it right. You know what you're doing because you're very smart. She then goes off to explore the rest of the theatre. She's got the power back on as well. We head into this massive like amphitheatre section, complete with instruments. We know there was a band playing, Sick Habit, if I recall, 2nd of September on the front of the theatre. And we kind of see this lovely stage set up, beautiful theatre, of course. They do say in the official podcast this was a real one in Vancouver, I think. So they weren't able to mess it up that much for the sake of the show because it was an old building and it was well looked after. So they like to see this scene as left preserved in a little silo. Before I listened to the official one, I was going to address that at the show because I felt everything was way too pristine. There's a theatre near you and me, Richie, that's been closed for pretty much all of our lifetime. And I follow some of those explorer pages, the ones who just go and sneak into places and have a look around. A couple of months ago, they showed photos from inside that theatre, and my word, this place was a shithole. Like, ceiling panels fall down, moisture had got in through the roof and ruined loads. Like, the paint was stripping off the walls, wood starts to rot, and I just felt that this theatre was just way too pristine to be 26 years after an apocalypse. The seats were immaculate, there was very little dust in the air, the instruments were fine on the stage. And it just kind of took me out of it a little bit where it just felt like a modern day theatre that she'd walked into. I don't know if you were reading too much into that or...
I didn't notice as much as you, to be honest. But
it was even just like the motif on the ceiling, as beautiful as it was. No plaster had discoloured or cracked or fallen away. And I'm just like,
It does seem odd. I even found it odd in the game that a building like that was seemingly largely untouched, because in the game it's a bit more, it's still empty, and it's in a bit more state of disrepair. But it feels like, because it's such a convenient location, for Ellie and Dina, why had no one else utilized it?
Yeah. Well, we know in the game there was two people who camped there because they were up on the little balcony, and we saw one of them who got absolutely fried trying to turn the electrics on. If you remember, you found that skeleton. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Like, it could have been a forward base.
Yeah, potentially. Either way, Ellie enters the amphitheater. We hear the Vanishing Grace song, which is from the game. You might remember it from the giraffe moment. It's that kind of really subtle, somber tone that gets played, just where you can hide. It's got actually very little musical cues, but they're in that kind of that dulled, muffled tone where it's very reflective, I think, of the moment, and that's kind of what we see from Ellie here. She finds the guitar, of course, begins to play. I did wonder for a second if we were going to get another rendition from another Aha Greatest Hits classic, but we don't. We get the song from the game, which is Pearl Jam's Future Days, which was the title of episode 1 of this series, if you recall. But yeah, she only sings the opening line, which is, if I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. And you can almost see in that moment, I think, Ellie/Bella's performance of just, she's thinking straight back to Joel. I think that's the first time she's maybe been able to take stock properly, where she's not with Dina, she's not chatting, she's not asleep, she's sat playing the guitar, singing their song, essentially, back to herself. And I think 2 episodes ago, we expected her to do it in the music shop, but she didn't. And I can see why now, because they've kept it for this moment instead. Side note for the game, did you think we were going to jump to the flashback at this point? When it paused on it for a moment, I was like, it's going to cut to black. It's going to cut to Joel playing a guitar.
Yeah, I thought it could have went that way. I wasn't 100%, but I felt like it could have done.
Yeah. It's just hearing the song. But when I hear that song, I immediately think of Joel singing it.
Yeah, in hindsight, I feel like they've probably done right by resisting that edge, resist that temptation. Because next episode seems to be a Joel episode.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have a full episode with him and Ellie.
Mm-hmm. It looks like that. But yeah, nice to see we got the song in the show. And again, for anyone addressing it as like Future Days wouldn't have been released when 2003 and the outbreak happened, Neil and Craig have said they don't care. So you can stop commenting on every YouTube video.
It's an alternative universe where everything happened a few years earlier. Get over it.
Hey, there's nothing to say, Richie. In an infinite list of possibilities, Joel could have just wrote this song himself.
Joel came across the music like before it was released.
Yeah, he might have been friends. His uncle's cousin's dog was friends with Pearl Jam's lead singer, and he just sent them a demo copy to listen to. And Joel was like that, and then all shit popped off in the apocalypse, and he was like, "Damn, I've got this great song." But yes, we digress. Dina enters from the back of the theater, kind of breaking Ellie out of a little remembrance trance. And says, I think she knows a way. They go back to the balcony, and she kind of it's more, I think, from an audience this point, almost like a visual storytelling of they need to show us as an audience, because her getting a piece of paper and just drawing on it, like literally, he's a patrol, he's a patrol, he's a big gap, he's a big empty thing. What does it mean? Was very, like, I think, very simple visual storytelling of, as an audience, where are we going? What's the plan? Rather than just them talking about it. Very simple mechanics, because obviously in the game you have maps to interact with, you can look, and you're kind of funneled towards that path. But
it worked in the context of the scene as well, not just in like providing the viewer like knowledge of what's going on. Because using Ellie as the viewer's reference point, Ellie's a little bit dim when it comes to this stuff. So Dina oversimplifies it for Ellie to get Ellie to understand. Yeah. So then as a viewer you go, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, Ellie's the brawn and Dina's the smarts, it would appear. Yeah. And that's kind of why they work off each other so well. So we've got this patrol. It is quite interesting, again, just seeing them tactically break it down. We've seen it a few times. We saw it before the supermarket when Dina was counting out who it was, and they said, you attack from behind, we use knives. And we'll see it later in this episode. I think them two, I guess, figuring out how they work together in tandem, it's interesting to see, because, it's a show. In the game, you go into stealth mode, you listen, you throw your bottle, you kind of map it out as you go. You don't really make a plan. But in real life, you would have to, right? You couldn't just go in and go all guns blazing thinking, I'll find some bandages over there and I'll make a Molotov cocktail, and if all else fails, I'll just reset the checkpoint. It's like, that's not what you can do in this world. So, they map it out. was quite interesting. What were your anticipations for what was going to be in the void? I had a feeling it was going to be like a factory of some sort, but
Yeah, I was trying to think of something from the game that would fit that we haven't seen. Don't you go through like a high school or something? Is that the first game? Or...
yeah, no, that's the second one is when R.I.P. Shimmer gets blew up. And Dina rolls off into like a basement somewhere and they can't catch her, but Ellie gets captured. She gets tied to the office chair while the Nick, who's the one who got slashed in his cheek, who isn't in the show at all, he's about to kill Ellie because Isaac says just get rid of them. And that's when Dina shoots through the ceiling panel glass, kills him, falls on the floor. Ellie gets free, stabs him, and then you have like this kind of shootout escape in a primary school. That's when the dogs are introduced. And you learn about, which we see a dog in this episode. Dogs are introduced. That's a different game mechanic, and you kind of go through this long meandering city streets, and that's when you end up in that Pride Town with all the flags and the graffiti. And you go, I think you and me did it on stream, and it took actually a lot longer than we thought.
Yeah, I think it was going to be something from that section of the game.
Yeah,
just because
very little story. That's probably the reason.
Yeah, there's very little story, but. As I was looking at it, okay, they're clearly setting up for this to be an action set piece.
Mm-hmm.
So what from the game haven't they used that they've already skipped?
Yeah.
That they could repurpose for this moment?
Yeah. From there, Dina, kind of as we alluded to, she breaks down the scars not using technology. She kind of explains them like Amish people. And again, it's what I love in this show is interesting of kind of putting yourself in their shoes and going, actually, you wouldn't know about history, all the stuff. So, like, Dina's obviously quite well educated, considering, like, at what point in her life, growing up in Santa Fe with her mum and sister, would the conversation of Amish people in Pennsylvania ever arose? But she explains, like, that's potentially what the scars are like.
Well, it makes sense for a place like Jackson to look to that information. How did they do the stuff that they did without the technology of the time? Because imagine if you're just suddenly deprived of technology.
Mm-hmm.
How do you build the house?
Who does it?
How would you find out? Well, yeah, this is it. You look to the peoples who didn't use modern technology, who kept to the old ways to relearn them. And Dina's more studious. Ellie probably would have learned some stuff, maybe not about the Amish.
Yeah.
But there again, Fedra is very much a fascist thing. I feel like it's more indoctrination with them.
Ellie was taught survival.
Learn how to be a guard, how to do a job for Fedra rather than...
Which might be why we've got
a classic education.
Might be why
Dina may have received.
The brains and the brawn delineation between these two characters here. It's really interesting. The girls then head out, say if we head off now while it's light, we should get there by nighttime, which is when they obviously want to sneak through the patrol fences. They head out, they're talking quite openly en route, just catching up. One thing that does bug me about all this, they're just straight up walking, Richie, in broad daylight down the middle of a street. You would be hugging a wall, right? At least. Like just to protect you on one side.
You'd be... Just in case you see something coming, you could get into a building, get cover.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be down in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
A bit too open with it.
Yeah. But I get it's a show, and they probably want to show the characters walking in this phenomenally realised environment. Yeah. I get it.
It would feel very awkward to have his dialogue if they're just like sneaking around, hugging the walls and diving from shadow to shadow.
Yeah, no one talk. It's not a game. Keep remembering that. Dina jokes about saying like, yeah, I'm gonna if it's a girl I'm having, I'm gonna call her Ellie. If it's a son, I'm gonna call Elijah. Ellie says it's a great name. She says I'm not actually calling it that. Don't know where the Elijah's from. They didn't really reference it. They didn't talk about it in the official podcast. Like it might come up later on.
I think it's just a male version of Ellie.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, it's a good point. Before immediately discovering a big pile of corpses underneath some Seraphite graffiti, they see the whole "Feel Her Love." And this is where this graffiti just looks like Hanrahan for me.
Yeah.
It's just like the same kind of hair, the same like almost like skeletal structure of her face. And then, this is how they're communicating between the scars and the wolves. Then underneath that, you've got it roughly scribbled, "Feel this bitch," and there's a pile of bodies. And it's clearly a message. The wolves are trying to center the scars, as we saw in the broadcast theatre last week, the scars hanging the wolves and gutting their entrails out. That's clearly a message. Like, these guys need to just get down and talk civilly for once. But they're clearly just at this state of warfare where the humanity's gone from both sides at this stage. They're willing to do anything.
Yeah.
Children, hanging people, eviscerating them. Nothing seems to be off the table for this stuff.
It all comes back to the main theme of the show, which is hatred.
Love and hate.
They just hate each other.
Yeah.
The first season was about love. This season's about hate.
Yeah. And again, at this point, from what we see in the show, the wolves very much look like the more evil of the sides. Like, we've seen them hunt down an entire group in the forest last week and kill children. Then we've seen them this week just murder them seemingly at gunpoint just against a wall, mass assassination style.
But we also saw the Seraphites hang people up in the broadcast station.
That's true.
And then light the corpses to leave a message.
That's true. So neither of these sides are that good.
Yeah, there's no good side here. And
Ellie and Dina are walking straight through the middle of it. Dina's sick again, of course, because morning sickness, pregnancy. I'm sure seeing a bunch of dead, festering bodies probably triggers that a little bit.
Yeah, the WLF need to get some cleaners.
Yeah, and Ellie has like an epiphany moment where she's like, "What the hell are we doing here? You have a child on the way now. We have a child on the way now. We can't be heading into a war zone." And she has this like almost like a panic attack moment of, "What am I doing? What am I doing?" And you know what? After having a week to rest on it a little bit, I know we covered it in last week's show around how odd it seems that the two girls were so determined to head into this war zone, knowing what they know now about being with child. And after a week of thinking about it, it dawned on me a little bit that actually...
They've had a few hours.
No, the way they've grew up and like survival being number one and being in Jackson, which probably has very few babies or young children, being pregnant in this apocalypse, it probably doesn't mean the same stuff that it does to you and me. And I think it was when I was talking about it with my wife and everything we went through with our daughter's pregnancy and knowing our friends and your loved ones and our own families themselves, having it in a civilized society in today's world and hospitals and doctors and bringing them up and sending them to school. If you're in Dina and Ellie's world right now, what does being pregnant and having a child actually mean? Have Ellie and Dina actually had any interaction ever with a baby? Ellie doesn't have any parents. Dina doesn't have any parents. What is their family dynamic? I don't think it's even sunk in what it means to them yet, which is why they're quite flippantly go, let's head into a war zone. Because I don't think having a child or being a family is as important as maybe we hold in our society, because they live in an apocalypse.
Yeah, possibly. I feel it's also, she is very much just found out she's pregnant. She's still very, very early in the pregnancy. So it's like, we either do this now or I can't do it. And Dina is very much 100% in on doing this as well.
Yeah.
It's not just Ellie. Dina wants to do this.
Yeah. But that's where I don't think it means the same thing as it does in our world.
Yeah.
It's more like if we die, we die.
I think the reality may not have settled in because Dina's probably known for a couple of days now.
Yeah. I mean, without the tests, you just wouldn't really know, would you? It just happened.
And it was only once when she got to Seattle that they got the tests, wasn't it? On the outskirts of Seattle. So Dina may have known for like maybe a week max. Mm-hmm. Ellie's known for a matter of hours.
Mm-hmm. Jesse doesn't even know yet.
Yeah, it's the case of, and they're far away from home, so they're not in that kind of settled situation where they're very focused on what they're doing in Seattle.
Yeah.
So they just probably haven't took time to take stock of what pregnancy means right now.
Yeah. And again, like, do they even know how long? Like, again, is Jackson teaching them about, you're pregnant for 10 months and expect this? And it's something we'll never really
I feel like
into.
Maria would bear in mind
would think so.
The items she gave Ellie in season 1.
Yeah, very true.
She's very much looking after the young women of Jackson.
But as you said, Dina's determined. She kind of like shuts Ellie off. She takes like that stock of her breath and goes, right, I'm marching onwards. And then she goes to explain to Ellie, like, you never asked me about the first person I killed, which we thought was a bit weird an episode back, if you remember, when Ellie told her about the second kill she did with Joel, but never thought to reciprocate that question to Dina and go like, right, how about you? You tell me your story now. I've told you mine. You tell me yours. And this is why. And yeah, Dina kind of plays it out and says, when she was an 8-year-old girl, she lived with her mum and her sister. She wanted to get out, but her mum was very extra cautious of, obviously, survival. She snuck out, took a gun with her, thought, I'm going to play out anywhere. Came home, both her mother and her sister had been killed by raiders. She kind of lets Ellie fill in the blanks just to show how fucked up this world is.
Yeah.
Dina says, yeah, she surprised the guy. He looked even more surprised after an 8-year-old shot him. But then she kind of uses that story to emphasize Joel's relationship with Ellie and what lengths she would have went to hunt down her mother and sister's killer, and kind of echoes the same sentiment that Ellie's got for Joel, and saying, like, no matter what, I would hunt them till the very end. And then she throws it back.
I feel like you feel like a bit like Joel was almost becoming a surrogate father to Dina as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not just Ellie's lost someone, which she likes to remind Ellie. It's like, I lost another father figure.
Yeah.
She seemingly no knowledge of her father at this point.
Mm-hmm.
She lost her mother. She lost her older sister. And then now she's lost Joel, someone who she was bonding with.
Yeah. And yeah, Dina gives Ellie the choice to continue or go back. It's over to you. And she kind of thinks about it. So it's like, we go on. We crack on. Now, I guess a little nod to the game here when Dina's originally from Santa Fe, because if I recall, that's where the second game eventually ends up. Was it Santa Barbara?
It's Santa.
They're not too far from each other.
Yeah.
The Californian coast, I think. Again, US geography. But yeah, Ellie, as Dina kind of wraps up, says, yeah, if I die, it's on me. And then it's Ellie's decision to say, like, yeah, let's crack on. Let's crack on. Maker of Chaos in the chat writes in, says, I do feel like it's the opposite in the game. Ellie was the one super dedicated to killing them. And I think off that point there, that's where the game, you've killed practically 100 people at this point. And that being that dedication to going through with it, I think the show has them balanced on like a different point almost, because the way they've had to tell the story. Ellie isn't a mass murderer at this point. She's not seen red to the point of she's willing to cut through hundreds of people to get to Abby. She's only really seen a couple of dead bodies.
Like Dina at times during the game just feels like she's along for the ride. Her motivations aren't as explored as much as the TV show is. The TV show is definitely going more into Dina's motivations.
Yeah, she's there for Ellie in the game, really.
Yeah, that's anything. But that's largely sums it up in the game. She's there to basically stop Ellie getting herself killed.
Yeah, which is why I love what the show's doing more, because we're just expanding on this and we're hearing about backstory. Like, we know Dina had a family, because when you find the synagogue in the game, they kind of talk about her religion and a little bit about her past, but you don't really get that explored. So to see her relationship with Joel, the way that pans out, the back and forth with Ellie, I think this is where the show is really just kind of adding on those extra layers to characters we already feel like we know.
Yeah, I feel like it's a case of the showrunners and Neil Druckmann have probably looked at Dina and went, we need to flesh her out more.
Yeah.
She needs to be on this quest of her own volition.
Yeah.
Rather than just a sidekick for Ellie.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. We then fast forward a little bit. We cut to the girls at night. They're breaking through the security fence under moving searchlights. So we kind of get an impression that the wolves are very much prepared and ready to fight off any Scar incursions that might happen. The girls access the building. They get in. They sit there against the door and they talk about... Again, we get to that point where we talk about their plan of attack. What are we going to do? And I love how Dina's logic, she very much breaks it down and says, like, well, we're in the building. Nothing's came out running at us yet, so that means there's no kind of clickers who are noise-based.
That door's open.
That door's open. She even goes on later on to talk about, like, they have searchlights, they have dogs. There's so much noise being made in this area. The building wouldn't be this quiet if there was a problem inside. And this is for me when it shows you the corridor we see in a moment. My brain was like, I know what part of the game we're up to right now, because I have I have horrific flashbacks myself of that moment. But yeah, they talk about their plan of attack and say, like, right, guns are a last opportunity, or we run. And I love that again, that brains and that brawn have cut to Ellie, and she's like, what do you think? I'm just going to get in there and start fucking shooting straight away. And she's like, yes, because you're crazy. That's exciting. It's one of the reasons why I love you, but I do want to make it out for you. And I thought it was one of them, like, you really need to sometimes just reiterate to Ellie, do we want to survive this? And you just going crazy like you usually do. Not a bad thing.
Dina, she knows very much. Before we act, we're going to discuss the plan.
Yeah.
The plan is quiet and knives. If you need to, gun, but we don't gun.
Yeah, we run.
Gun makes noise. Noise attracts anything. Could be more infected. Could be wolves. Could be seraphites. We don't know. Mm-hmm. So let's not make noise.
Let's be tactical right here. And again, it kind of goes back to Dina being the brains behind this, because she does know Ellie really, really well. and we've seen it in multiple ways play out. Of she kind of just gets a bit bloodlusty. Of like she just charges in full on. And this is all about stealth and quiet. This is the part where you should be squatting the whole way, using listening mode in the game, and sneaking about. There was a really good line that I did really had a little chuckle out of me, which was when they peek in the door and say, "Can you see anything?" She says, "No, it looks haunted but empty." And Dina goes, "Just like us." Oh, just like us. It's like they've got that, like they've just got that relationship dynamic down. I really do like it, but. The girls say, we're going to go ahead with knives. And as I said, Richie, we get that creepy corridor. All the music cuts out. And in my head, I'm like, we're in that office block. We're in that part of the game. We're not quite at the hospital yet, but we've got to go through the office block. And we know what's in the office block in the game. You are on your own.
Doesn't the office block happen after the hospital in the game?
I thought it happened just before.
I can't remember whether I always thought I might be wrong. But I always thought it was like on the way out from the office block.
Oh, it might be actually,
from the hospital on your way back to.
It might be, yeah.
But
visually,
it doesn't really matter.
No, the order of things can be swapped around. But that corridor, and again, all the music cuts out. You just kind of have like this a faint, like just like an ambient noise in the background. Like it sounds like a very faint like generator sound almost to me. But there's no music. There's no Santo La La playing along or anything.
Yeah.
But the girls kind of make their way through the corridor. All seems well so far. But back to last week's episode, it's quiet. Too quiet. Right? Way too quiet for the last one. It's like, why is there a void here? Why is the big empty building? Why are they not patrolling it? I'm surprised it wasn't sealed up. They got in quite easily as well. But either way, they make their way down. You see the torchlights going around. And we as an audience, it does that such a brilliant horror trope like we got in the supermarket back in episode 1 of the camera pans past this like appendage, all sticky and bloody, just in the shadows underneath some of the machinery. And the girls can't see it, but we can as an audience. And we're like, oh, something's in here. It's not safe. The girls kind of hunker down behind some chemical barrels. And I don't know about you, but the sound that they make, it reminded me of, when you see like sirens in like mermaid folktale and movies, that like very faint, like whispery noise. And I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, imagine if the infected adapt to make sounds of humans. Help me. Like, could you imagine being a human in a scenario where you hear someone actively call out, help me, and you as a human go, someone needs us, and it's a trap. Like, if they get to that point where they're able to like parrot human noises in like this faint like thing, and it's really creepy. This thought of sirens in the fog of the ocean going, "Come see me, help me, we need help."
It's not that weird of a concept, considering if you think of take cats of all things. Cats don't meow at other cats. It's not how cats communicate.
Let's fight with them.
Cats meow. Humans communicate with humans.
You can tell we both listen to the official podcast, can't you?
Yeah, is that where I stole it from?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but either way, it's like, yeah, it makes sense.
And there's one for reference right behind you. Meow.
2.
Where's the other one?
One here and one here.
Oh, one's just out of shot, yeah.
Yeah.
So the girls take stop behind some chemical barrels. We hear those faint sounds. And as Dina does, they just kind of scan the room, and you get that usual scan left to right of nothing on the ground, and then the torch, the circle of vision, the cone of vision, pans up, and you see that reflected, almost like cat's eyes, actually, in one of the stalkers. They both quickly brick it, drop back down, and go, "What the fuck was that?" And Ellie kind of recounts her experience in the supermarket and says, "It's one of the smart ones." And immediately the kind of the horror and the tension is elevated then, because you don't know how to deal with these things. They are tactical. And I think what did it for me was when they went up for the second look and it went back to where it was.
Yeah.
It didn't move. It was like it's confident enough to go back to its starting point, because it's like it's trying to lure you in. It wants you to see it in that moment. And that for me is like next level of like 3D chess levels of I'm hunting you down, but you don't know which way I'm doing it. And you can almost like the girls like frantically try and scramble together a new plan. They're going like, right, I tell you what, there's 2 of us, there's one of it, we'll flank it, I'll make a distraction, we'll flank it. And then very quickly, Richie, we realise it's not 2v1. It's way out of whack, and they are absolute pack hunters. And there's probably about 7, 8, 9 of them in the warehouse with
There's
them.
loads. I didn't count, but there's loads.
They're just hidden in the shadows, all stalking around. Ellie quickly, frantically makes up that plan of like, right, we have minimal seconds here. See that cage over there, Dina? You go get in it. I can get bit. Let's go. And they just have to kind of react and go with it. I like how the knives immediately goes out the window.
Yeah.
This is like all that breakdown of, yeah, shit, this is how close to death they potentially are, that they resort to their guns straight away. I don't know about you, but this all reminded me of Jurassic Park. Getting to the cage, Laura Dern's character running away from the raptors just to slam the door. The cage getting ripped apart. Ellie, I don't know if you've seen how Ellie got taken down. She got flanked very much clever girl, Velociraptor style. She thought there was one to the left, and as she looked, one got her from the right. And yeah, what were your thoughts on this scene? It played out very erratically, as you can imagine.
It's interesting because Ellie does know that she can still get ripped apart. So I think in the moment, Ellie's probably one of them where Dina's very much the more calculating, strategic thinker.
Mm-hmm.
Ellie's very much in the moment, reactionary.
Yeah.
So she sees the cage, she gets Dina in the cage because that's her first priority is to protect Dina at this point in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Dina's protected the best I can. Now I will fight them off. And she's completely overwhelmed because she struggled against. Well, she got bit against one stalker.
Yeah. She gets bit
does
here
fairly
too,
well.
right?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh yeah, easy.
Definitely. I know they address it in a moment, but I'm like, is this the 5th time in the show she's been bitten now?
She's never. You don't see a bite, but there's no way she isn't. Realistically, she gets up. She's on the floor. She's got about 4 of them on her, but she does surprisingly well considering she got her ass kicked off one stalker.
Yeah, I guess this is where the stalkers, they're not as outright aggressive as the clickers and runners. They're more fragile. They're sneaky, aren't they? They're slinky, but they've adapted to be quiet and silent in the dark. Whereas the clickers and stuff, they're just sheer all out aggression. Same with the runners. They're just, like I said, they're closer to humans, so they kind of like tear at people and rip them limb from limb. Whereas stalkers seem a little bit more adapted to maybe quiet takedowns in the dark.
Or group takedowns.
Absolutely.
So once the battle starts, they'll all just keep trying to flank Ellie.
Yeah.
Till they get her.
Dina locks herself in the cage. She obviously runs out of bullets very, very quickly. Ellie, as you said, takes out 1 or 2 of them, but she ends up on the deck getting kind of surrounded by them. And then, out of nowhere, we think maybe all has failed. Bang, the savior arrives. Bang, another shot. Bang, another shot. Very specifically shot scene, this, I felt like, to kind of echo who is this as an audience. We don't know. Everyone's thinking who it could be. In my head, I'm thinking it's obviously going to be 2 of the characters we expect to show up. I think Craig and Neil talk on the official podcast of like they wanted to frame this as so in the haze of everything going on and the adrenaline and the kind of probably the fog of it all. They want Ellie to almost feel like this is Joel has came to save her. Like she forgets for a moment that actually when she's been in deep shit before, who has always been there for her. And this is probably the first time she's been that deep in the shit and he hasn't been there. But just the last minute survival, the hand reach out, and then obviously it's all revealed to it's Jesse. Jesse's finally here in the show because I was getting worried he wasn't coming, Richie. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Well, they skipped Hillcrest, which is the area of the game where you go through like a small like suburb, and that's where you meet Jesse. Mm-hmm. So they've just moved it into this. Yeah. And you were right, by the way. The office block does happen before the hospital.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yes.
Good to know. It's scary as shit in the game as well.
Yeah.
It's that weird one where you are so familiar with runners and clickers, that different tact of now I have to be really quiet, but the fact that they don't show up on the listening mode, which you become so accustomed to using to find where the enemies are at, is like, oh no, now I have to use actual like torchlight in the shadows. But Jesse's here. He shows up, saves the day. Captain Wyoming himself. The group flee into a nearby park. They're obviously pursued by the wolves because they've shot the entire factory up. So you can imagine the patrols and the guards kind of flock to them now. Again, back to Jurassic Park, Richie. They don't heed the warning and they run straight into the long grass. Don't go into the long grass. The wolves stop at the kind of park boundaries, saying we don't go in there. Leave them be. You hear them radio saying, I think we've got an unknown third group. So the wolves are now aware these aren't scars. I think they refer to them as unknowns. We've got 3 unknowns heading into the park. The 3 of them get down. Ellie keeps trying to have a conversation with Jesse, which Jesse's mood at this moment in time is not ready to talk. I think he snaps back at her at one point and says, do I look like I want to fucking talk right now? It's like he is full on survival mode.
Yeah.
And Ellie's
which is
kind of
rightly
like,
so.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
Shut up and follow my fucking lead.
Mm-hmm.
That's the mode he's in. Is like,
yeah, he's in charge immediately right now, and you can kind of get that sense of Ellie's a bit shocked, but I feel like she immediately realizes that because of his role back in Jackson, she's almost like demoted immediately.
Yeah.
And he saved her. He saved Dina where she couldn't. They were fucked at that point. And that's where I think, Ellie's like keeps berating him and talking. And then he turns around and says, like, until you what? And she's like, until we weren't. Like, we had it under control until you what? Until you weren't. And he's like, yeah, he literally just saved you both from the end right there. And he had a better weapon. They took pistols and he had an actual, like, rifle. Like, his shots were taking them out.
Bit sloppy from Dina as well, because the way Jesse finds them is he finds Dina's triangulation map.
Mm-hmm.
She left that shit out in the open.
Yeah, you track them down very quickly, realistically.
Because he turned up the theater and looked at the map and went, I know where they are, and went there. That could have been anyone.
Well, leaving maps lying around can come bite you in the ass, it turns out.
At least it must have been left on a table or something. Because if they hid it a bit, it would have took me ages to find.
Just a scrap of paper, yeah. It's interesting. Jesse does fill in the blanks of saying, like, him and Tommy did follow the day after, so they left Jackson. Yep. I think Ellie says, like, well, you come to save us or something. And she's like, no, we've came to get you. Like, we didn't get the permission of Jackson. It seems like they both snuck out again against the council. You got to remember, Jesse's he's been on her side, but within reason so far, and he's taken the choice to go with Tommy, obviously after conversations they've had, which is a flip to the game, because in the game, Tommy has gone out ahead of time. You, Ellie, and Dina are following in his wake, and then Jesse catches up with you after the fact again. He's there for Dina, you're there for Tommy. It has like this domino knock-on effect of people following people after Abby, inevitably.
Yeah, reading between the lines, I feel like after Ellie left, Tommy went, I'm going after her, and Jesse's done the whole, not on your own, you're not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of what Dina did to Ellie.
Yeah. So while we're in the park, obviously everyone's getting nuzzled down. The wolves have kind of faded off in the background, and then we hear that sharp seraphite whistle, which immediately has me on edge as someone who's played the game as well. That sharp whistle, we see a group light up the torches, and we begin to witness a torture scene, quite frankly, just plays out in front of us in the middle of the forest. There seems to be like a seraphite priest. He's got like a sharp sickle. They string a wolf up, a kind of hangman style, pop his shirt off as the start kind of, they have like a very religious chant on there, almost of like, he's nested with sin, free him so that he may know hell love. And then he just takes that sickle and straight up eviscerates the guy down his stomach. Entrails hanging out everywhere, similar to what we saw in the broadcast station. And now he's not interested in
anything this wolf has to say. The wolf is like, I'll tell you everything. He's just like, nope, don't care.
Yep, past that point. But now he is free. When they chant, like, let her love in, she can see him now, and nested with sin. So very, again, particular terms to use there. I couldn't tell if the priest had scars on his face, like the ritual where they all have to add them on. He had a big beard, so I'm presuming it's just hidden within the beard. But he has... that's clearly something they do. It's whether they've always done it or not. But this guy's like, I'll be one of you, I'll tell you what Isaac's up to, and they just don't care. They're just like, no. Part of their, I guess, teachings is that we just kill you now. We free you from your sin.
Well, that's it. I think the key thing there is they feel like they're absolving them of the sin.
Yeah. That's how you do it? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, I do it all the time.
With a sickle.
Yeah. Whatever's lying around, really.
We then hear, it's kind of all broken up after that, we hear a sharp alert whistle. Because they do have this communication between the scars. Obviously, they communicate in the game. There's a whole language spoken between kind of like alert whistles and we're hunting someone whistles, or we need help over here whistles. I don't think I could distinguish personally without really studying it.
No, I never could tell.
But that sharp alert whistle happens. Dina takes an arrow. It is to the leg, but we're going to say an arrow to the knee because it's a game reference. Almost. Ellie quickly...
I used to be an adventurer, but I took an arrow to the knee.
I used to be a scar till I took an arrow to the knee. Ellie instructs Jessie to get Dina out of here. She causes a distraction and says, we'll meet back up at the theatre. They head off in different directions. Ellie shoots. Again, you hear more whistling through the forest as she kind of frantically runs. You can hear arrows kind of whistling past her ear. I think one of the guys actually has a crossbow. Tries to shoot her, and she trips up. She falls in the mud. And it's in these moments here I'm always thinking, just stay still. The more movement you make, the more tension you draw to yourself. And it tells me, like, when they were there, it was like, just hide in the grass. Like, I think if I just laid down in the grass and let them all run around, unless someone actively stepped on you,
yeah,
you'd be pretty safe. And I would quite happily crawl my way out of there, whether it took me 2 or 3 hours.
Very, very slowly. Just keep moving, but slowly.
Yep, let someone, like, I wouldn't even react until someone, like, was practically on top of me. Then I'd shoot them. And then I always think if someone hears a gunshot, runs over, you could stay exactly where you were because they're not going to think to look right at the base of their feet and all that and all that grass. But of course, it's a show. Ellie then, when hiding, she spots a sign that says Lakeside Hospital, Richie, which is immediately where she forgets about Dina, she forgets about Jessie, and she's immediately laser focused on, I have an opportunity here. And it just goes back to what you were talking about of all relationships and stuff aside, does it matter to Ellie?
This is I think the key moment for Ellie where she toyed with the decision during the day. Mm-hmm. Does she take it back? She has a bit of a moment, or do I take you back? But critically, Ellie says that she would take her back. But she implying that she would return. Again, I'm not sure in that moment if she would. Yeah. Once she got back to Jackson, the reality of several months more on the road with Dina, who's getting more and more pregnant, I think Ellie's head could be changed. This is a moment where she has to make a decision. Do I pursue my vengeance or do I return to the theatre? And if I return to the theatre, it's probably it. Yeah. We're probably, in the morning, we're probably heading back to Jackson.
And of course, Jessie's here now, so she's also got like that out of Dina is being cared for by Jessie. Yeah. She's not on her own. Also, in the moment when they were running through the park, Jessie did say like, we're meeting up with Tommy. We'll rendezvous them on and then head home. And Ellie's like, what? Like she's heard in the last couple of minutes, like all of their plans are about to turn around, and she's almost feels like she's going to be forced to go back to Jackson. And I think this is where, in that moment, she's like, it's now or never. It's now or never. It is kind of concerning that she doesn't care to maybe check if Dina's okay and Jessie made it out. Like, they could be dead on the other side of the park by now. Hunted down, strung up, gutted.
That's it. She has a choice. Does she go back to her friends or does she pursue vengeance?
That's what she picks. We then cut to the hospital borders where we see searchlights, more patrol dogs. This is the introduction of dogs, of course. They are in the second game. They're an absolute bitch to not just in the dog term, but an absolute bitch to get away from because they follow your scent. And anywhere you've been, they track you, they alert the guards. It's a whole different game mechanic, which again does elevate it a little bit in the fear factor. But in the show, we've got the dog Bonnie. They give her a name, Bonnie, which I hope giving it a name doesn't set the fate for this dog in later episodes. But she starts immediately, senses Ellie in the grass. The guard gives chase with the dog, heads down a small hole. Terrible guard, by the way.
Terrible guard. I was just thinking that, like,
immediately just goes like, some kind of critter made its way down a hole. It's like, you have the dog literally barking to alert you to these things.
You're looking at the hole going, if there was a Seraphite round here who would let the dog, where would they go? They go in that fucking hole.
Yeah. I feel like if the hole was maybe so small, it would be very hard to believe. But we then, I guess, cut to Nora tending to injured soldiers within the hospital. Do you feel like we got to the hospital very quick from the park? Again, I know in the game there's a lot. Like you go up through a few floors of a building, you traverse a bit more.
there's another section to get up to the outskirts of the hospital. Then you have to stealth your way into the hospital.
Yeah.
It just kind of skipped that.
I felt for me, it was just Ellie goes in hall, Ellie's in the hospital. Not even just in the hospital, Richie. She's in the exact room where she needs to be to see Nora. So
yeah, I think it could have done with a short scene of like Ellie sneaking past a few guards or something. Just to show that, because it just looks like she got past that one guard and then that's it.
She's just there. She's on the right floor, the right location, the right person.
I don't think you need a full-on shootout or anything, or even see Ellie kill anyone else. Just a little bit of Ellie slipping past people.
Yeah, I felt like I needed a little bit more than just sliding in a hole. Yeah. And that hole seemingly just lands bang in Nora's office. Like that's
I bet you. I bet you it feels like one of them where they've probably shot a few scenes and it probably didn't work for pacing.
Yeah.
Or the length of the episode.
Yeah.
Then just cut it, and you can fill in the blanks yourself.
I agree. And this is where the show has to differ from the game. Like, as much as you have like 10, 15 hours of exploration in the game and fight scenes and kind of environmental storytelling, a TV show doesn't have that luxury. No matter how much we would want it to, it always has to make sacrifices as well. So as I said, Ellie's in the room with Nora. Nora's cleaning up some bandages. She's putting like presumably like bleach or some kind of antiseptic wash or something on them. Ellie makes herself known, creeps in from the shadows, confronts Nora, very, very to the point. Do you remember me? Yeah, you remember me. Nora, I think, very quickly realizes who she is. She goes on to say, if you shoot me, every soldier's going to come running. Ellie doesn't care. She says, like, you'll still be dead. And then Nora's like, we let you, like, live. Like, she's very tactical in this moment, Nora. Very, very tactical. She almost, I think, Ellie is obviously new to this. She's never really interrogated someone at gunpoint before. And you can see she I think she shows her cards a bit too soon by asking, like, where's Abby? Then Nora knows, like, right off the bat, like, right, I get what your purpose is. I know who you are. And then she plays the psychology card on Ellie straight away, referring to Joel. I'm sorry you had to see him die like that.
She's trying to get Ellie to drop her guard.
Yeah, sometimes at night,
talk her down.
Still hear his screams, and I think Ellie almost like she gets dragged into that humanization that Nora's clearly going for. Of like, oh, I didn't think of it like that. Like, yeah, you didn't kill Joel. Like, that's the reality. Nora did not kill Joel. It was Abby. She was there. She was involved to some degree, but she didn't do it. So yeah, Nora's saying like, I still hear his screams at night. I'm really sorry that you had to see that. That was never our intention. And you do see like Ellie's guard like drop, and she's like, oh shit. And then, Nora with that flip twist of just the little bitch got what he deserved. And you can see like the reality come back pouring into Ellie's face as Nora slaps her with them chemicals, like bleach or whatever it is, all over acid. Is she going to have acid burns next week?
No, I feel like it's probably just like alcohol or something.
Yeah. Something that would be like, if you got it in your eye, it would be great, but it's not going to melt her face off. Yeah, Nora slaps her with the chemicals, makes a break down the corridor. Ellie pursues, shooting wildly at Nora, alerting everyone in the hospital to her presence. There was a funny part where she ran through the corridor and Nora shouts at the guys on the balcony of like, intruder, shoot her. And I did wonder at that moment, what if Ellie was running after Nora saying, intruder, shoot her? If you were a guard in that moment, would you know what the fuck to do? You're like, is she with us? Is she not with us? She's instructing us to shoot her.
Nora seems to be at least to some degree on medical duty. She isn't the medic of Abby's group, but she seems to have some medical abilities. So I think most guards will probably be aware of Nora.
I'm just thinking in that frantic moment, if you're a guard up on that balcony and you see two people running and one with a gun, if you're the chaser and you shout, intruder, shoot her, I think as a guard on the balcony, I'd be like, yeah.
I think as well, there's probably not that many of them in like the hospital, so they probably do all know each other in sight.
They're probably caught off guard as well. They don't really know.
Like, what the fuck's going on? But
Nora, obviously they give chase. This is a really fun part of the game where you're kind of chasing her through all these windy corridors. She flees to the abandoned section of the hospital before hitting a dead end, all the chairs and tables stacked up.
Accidentally. You can see it go, shit.
Shit. Took a wrong turn at Albuquerque. Doesn't know where else to go. She looks, there's a slight opening in the elevator shaft. She looks across and it looks like you can see the other side where I think she plans to make a jump across the elevator shaft. Ellie kind of catches up with her. She makes that decision. Fuck it, I'm going for it. She jumps across, grabs the cable, plummets down. The elevator kind of just gives way. She drops down a floor to B2. You can hear the radio guys as Ellie kind of goes in after her. Terrible shot, by the way, Ellie. She's literally less than 2 meters away from you, and you miss her twice in a sealed, isolated room. Ellie chases down. They kind of head up to the other side within B2 now, out the elevator doors. You can actually hear the wolf soldiers over the radio shouting, like saying, we have a breach, back off. So they are aware that whatever's just happened in there, seal it off. That's primary importance. Number one is get this place sealed off again. In the game, it does happen a bit different. Ellie knocks Nora into a hole, and they actually do send people down after you with gas masks on. But
in the game, they're already aware of the spores. And how to handle them. So
and spores were like a part of the life, so they use gas masks all the time. But Ellie continues her pursuit down to the B2, and this is where we kind of see the horrors below, don't we, Richie? We see the fungus covering every inch of the walls, like some alien planet. We now learn, I guess, that cordyceps, after 26 years of incubation, this is what happens. They grow and just become part of everything. We see Ellie discovers an infected member of, I don't know if it's of a previous team or it's the original patients. They're kind of part of the wall. It very much reminded me of Bootstrap Bill from Pirates of the Caribbean, part of the ship, part of the crew. And like even to the point where he was covered in barnacles and I guess seashells and stuff. These guys are literally part of the wall, covered in fungus, cordyceps out the eyeballs, quite literally. She then discovers poor Leon Park, the son mentioned at the beginning of the episode, and they're just kind of vaping, Richie. They're just vaping mycelial cordyceps flavored vape out into the air, and this is where I guess the origin of the spores comes from. And Ellie doesn't kind of even take any notice of them. She kind of passes by the bodies, obviously in shock.
She looks at it with a bit of fascination.
And I guess that's what happens when you're not coughing your guts up.
It reminds me of, the morbid fascination she has when she's first with Joel and she discovers one in the basement.
Like episode
the shop
2.
where she's in. And she's just like...
She stabs it with a knife,
She stabs one. Yeah. It's that kind of morbid curiosity. It's like, I could kill you, but I'm busy right now.
Yeah. Would you have killed them? Put them out of their misery? Because they look very much still alive, like trapped in there.
I think that's the big argument, I think, with cordyceps is how conscious are you?
Even just to stop the spores.
Is the human host conscious at all still? What stage of the infection do you lose that consciousness?
Yeah, just a quick knife to the head, maybe.
Because sometimes it looks like they're conscious, but is that just the spores reacting to someone's presence?
Yeah, they did see Ellie and they were like, like little cloud comes out of spores. But obviously, Ellie's not fazed by it. She goes past. She turns on the emergency power. We get that basked in red light, which of course is such a symbol of the second game, especially. We know shit's about to go down. Ellie finally catches up with Nora, infected and struggling to breathe on the floor by a locked doorway. She kind of catches up to her. Nora kind of says, like, when Ellie catches up with her, they're spores, you've killed us both. And this is where Ellie just kind of, I guess, comes into her. And in the evil red light, in that moment, the prey has caught the predator has caught its prey. She says, like, you can just see Nora's like coming to that realization of like, oh shit, your hair, and you're not coughing, your eyes aren't bleeding, like you are the girl that I guess Nora didn't really know about her. She'll have just been part of the Firefly group, and she knew that it was rumored, and I'd imagine Jerry, Abby's dad, and Marlene and stuff were keeping that very strict under wraps on a need to know basis. But that rumor of like, what are we all doing here as Fireflies? We're trying to find a cure. There's an immune girl traveling across country with a smuggler. Like, you just don't know how much they knew. Like a fairy tale.
Nora, like, they definitely heard of rumors, but at the start of the season, like, Abby's group were like, they mentioned the rumors and like, I don't know if it's true or not, and then just kind of dismiss them. This is the moment where Nora's like, oh shit, it was real. Yeah. So that's where she probably goes, like, double sounds like, that bastard Joel could have saved prevented us saving it. It's real. What they were trying to do, the rumors that we're hearing were real.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, where she doubles down and saying, like, yeah, you've killed us both. And Ellie's like, nope, I'm fine. And then she kind of defaults to, you know what he did, right? Like, he killed everyone in that hospital, including the only person alive who could make a cure from you. And this is where, as an audience, we learn that was Abby's father, and Joel shot him in the head. And Ellie's response, I know. She knows. I don't know if she's just keeping a brave face in front of Nora, or, as we know, and probably from next week's episode,
she knows.
Ellie's had some kind of interaction with Joel prior to the events of this season. And she doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like, she's maybe even came to terms with it now Joel's gone. And I think that's the interesting character dynamics that we're going to see play out for the rest of this season. Of, like, all things said and done, did Ellie really care? She had her purpose. She wanted to serve her purpose.
She wanted to forgive Joel, but she wasn't ready to. And the opportunity to forgive him was robbed from her.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's part of what's led her down to this moment, is the opportunity to forgive Joel, she lost.
And Abby took that away.
Now she wants to take yeah.
And
she wants to hold people responsible for that.
She keeps saying that line of, like, where is Abby? Where is she? And you know what? Shout out to Nora. Seemingly, even close to death, she's unwilling to give up her friend. She forces Ellie to almost, like, put the gun in a holster, find an alternative method to torture her and get the information that she needs. She has a look around. I'll get the spores now. There's a pipe. And then at this point, Nora's like, no, not giving you information. No. And Ellie just gives her a sharp crack over the leg with a steel pipe. Twice, right? 3 times. In the game, this is one of the moments where it just pauses on Ellie's face. And you have to press, I think, circle or something to hit. And you can't get away from it. You can just linger on it, and it's just Ellie in the dark and the red. Like,
it forces you as the gamer to commit that torture.
You have to do it.
And it's implied in the game as well that Ellie's tortured for probably a little while.
Information out of her. She's spattered in blood and stuff by the end of this scene. And it mirrors so much Abby in this moment of like, she goes for the leg, just like Abby went for Joel's leg, and just the beating, like a physical beating. And are we just at a point now where Ellie's doing the same thing? Nora didn't kill Joel.
Yeah.
And yet she's there quite happily beating it to death. Does Nora deserve it? Did Joel deserve it? Like, it's all different sides of a coin, right? And it just ends with a screaming like, where is she? Where is she? She's so bloodlust gone at the moment. And back to, I think, one of your points. I wonder if the spores, like, breathing them in, does that, like, with Ellie's immunity, does that increase, I don't know, like testosterone, rage? Like, I know she's immune, but it's in her system. There's something in her system causing her to be violent, perhaps. Like, where are we at on a scientific level?
I just think it might be just Ellie. I think because what she's experienced, what she's always experienced, what she's brought up to do, and how deep she's went into her own hatred of Abby. The one person she truly loved in the world was taken from her because of Abby. She is committed to doing whatever it takes. Yeah. And bear in mind, Joel is someone who wasn't afraid to use violence to get what he wanted.
Yeah, very true.
So this is how Ellie sees it's how she sees the world. Like, a capacity for violence is very important.
Yeah. And we'll find out, I guess, next week or the week after if she gets the information she needs. Where is Abby? Does Nora give her friend up in the end, or does she die trying?
In the game after, she always looks quite shaken by what she's done.
Yeah, her hands shaken from the beating, and just I think as you probably walk back, I think she rocks up at the theater like in the pouring rain again, doesn't she? Like visibly shaken.
Yeah, it just cuts to her turning back up the theater,
and it's like, what have you done? I think it's actually the moment I think Dina, they sit in the back and she kind of takes her top off and Dina kind of sees to her wounds, and you see Ellie's like battered, bruised, cut, beaten, shaken, psychologically fucked up. And yeah, they have that like kind of soft moment. I think Dina kisses her on her shoulder or something, and like just wraps her back up and cares for her a little bit after the atrocities she's potentially just committed. But yeah, we don't get to see that though. It cuts to black, and then it fades into a nice warm sunrise. We're back in Ellie's bedroom in Jackson. It's a nice bird song is on the sound waves, Richie, and yeah, she turns to see Joel Pedro Pascal standing in a doorway. He says the line, "Hey kiddo," and it cuts to credits. It's like he's back, he's alive. No, it's probably a flashback, and you're looking ahead to next week's episode. We've alluded to it a little bit in the running of this show, but it looks like next week is extensively going to be the flashback episode.
Yeah.
We're going to get loads of stuff from the game. We're going to see a lot more of Ellie and Joel's relationship. I think this is where they're going to really fill in the blanks of like what was happening before the dance at the beginning of the series, what was happening in their relationship, what happened with Ellie and Joel in regards to the Fireflies being killed, and did she really know by the end? Did they wrap things up? Is she willing to forgive him? I think we'll start to get that panning out. But that brings us to an end for that episode. 2 episodes left, Richie. There's a few things again with the pacing. I think Maker of Chaos in the chat says, yeah, I feel like the show did need an extra episode in between. It's mad that we have only 2 left. And I think if next week is the flashback episode, I can't help but feel in this moment, knowing we probably have another 2 years to wait for season 3.
Yeah.
Where's Tommy? Where's Abby? We've seen nothing of Owen, Mel, and Manny, really. I just feel like we're running out of time to establish these characters as to the point where we would have done in the game. And I know it's different, but I can't help feel like if you're an audience member, you hate Abby
and then
for what she did,
and then you're
just never going to see her again.
There's still talk of a Eugene episode, and if that is...
I think he's going to be part of the flashbacks. I think it's going to be interwoven into these ones.
It's got to be done well, because it feels like it'd be a complete utter waste of time if it's not.
Yeah.
Where if they did like a Bill and Frank kind of thing, where it's like it's just the episode's focused on them, I feel like that would be a waste of time.
I suspect, and I know I've said it before, I think Ellie's going to get wind of Eugene being an ex-Firefly.
And reach out to him.
We're going to reach out to him, see if he's got any contacts, and he's potentially going to go with her to the hospital.
Yeah.
Potentially. And that's where Joel's going to have to catch up with them. Potentially put Eugene down, and they're going to have to come back and lie to Gale and Jackson and say he got bit during whatever he was doing. He was looking for his weed or selling his weed to some other people. But yeah, I do think next week's going to be great because obviously we get to see Ellie and Bella and Pedro have a bit more screen time together, which is what made season 1 so good. Their little back and forth, that father-daughter relationship. But yeah, I just feel like I would have liked to see more of Tommy in Seattle by now. I would have liked to see a lot more of Abby's side of the coin, because I really just think as an audience, I want the viewers to care more about Abby before the revelation of it was her dad that was killed. And we've kind of gone over that now, and Nora knows, the audience knows.
I feel what they've wanted to focus on this season is the development of Ellie and Dina's relationship. And ultimately now, Ellie's descent into full-on hatred.
Yeah.
And I feel like the maybe leaving Abby out of it to let the viewer become more sympathetic towards Abby without having to see what Abby's up to.
Yeah.
Because you have to, we're in a weird place because we know the story.
Yeah.
But if you're just watching this week on week, you're now kind of looking at Ellie going, she's starting to cross some lines here that is very reminiscent of Abby. Now, then you immediately gone from Ellie's probably darkest moment so far to probably one of the sweetest moments she's had with Joel.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of juxtaposition of, oh, this is what she was and this is where she is now. I think this might be the end of Ellie for this season, outside the flashbacks.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I think this final episode's definitely going to have to not only set up a lot, but it also needs like a finale. It needs some kind of grandstand. Like, do we see more? Because there's a whole stuff, isn't there, with like Mel and Owen and Abby and Manny and going out and
I think
the
that's
wolves and the
next
scars.
season.
Yeah, I think it has to be now as well, because I think we've got so little time left to explore those relationships and that narrative. I could see Tommy. We know he's in Seattle now. We know he's elsewhere. Maybe we get an episode dedicated to like Tommy's journey, who he encounters. Is he going to take down one of the group by accident? Because remember, he wants vengeance just as much. If the opportunity presents to him to maybe take Manny down or someone, he might do. But yeah, we'll have to find out next week. Richie, we end every week's episode of the ClickerCast with breaking down the best performance, the best moment, and the best game adaptation of the week. Where are you teetering for this week's performance? The best performance?
I don't know. I think everyone's is an amazing actor. It's really sometimes very difficult to get a standout. Dina's solid, but I didn't think she was done anything exceptional.
She had a good monologue, but yeah, I wouldn't say it was like standout.
Yeah, Bella Ramsey always crushes it as Ellie. Nora as well.
Yeah. She delivered a bit. It was quite short though, I feel like.
It was.
As a slight aside to that, did you see Neil Druckmann has already prepared the actress Gabriella Tatiana for her upcoming role in the Naughty Dog Intergalactic game, and said like they're already looking at getting a psychiatric help for dealing with the online abuse that she's inevitably going to get, which is such a sad
a shame. It's a sad indictment of the industry.
In regards to performance, though, this week I might be tempted to give it to the Stalker extras.
Okay.
Thinking, like, actually, their movements and their ferocity and just the way they attacked, I thought, obviously it was all choreographed, it was all mapped out and stuff, but the horror they managed to get from, like, creeping up on canisters and crawling around on the floor, and we know these are humans in prosthetic stunt actors. I think in light of no one having any standout dialogue parts, I think I might be happy to give it over to performance for those, because they don't really get much credit, do they? And yet they make the show what it is.
I kind of want to avoid just giving it every week to Bella Ramsey.
Yeah, I agree. And kind of, I guess, to the moment of the week as well. I enjoyed everything in between it, but just that scene with the corridor and then seeing them and then...
The Red Room.
I
was thinking...
Are you thinking that? I guess, yeah. I think moment of the week maybe is the Red Room bit.
But we could go for that as best game adaptation.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's almost one for one.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think so. I think they're both great moments. I agree. The Red Room.
So a moment that we're going the Stalkers.
Yeah, we'll go with the Stalkers. We'll give them that. But yeah, do let us know in the comments below what your favourite performance was from this week, what your favourite moment of the week was, or what you loved seeing adapted from the video game week on week. I think the show does such a stunning recreation of moments and scenes and layout. And Craig Mazin in the podcast was saying, like, when they did the theatre stuff and they did the balcony and the other rooms and the rooftop, if they have an opportunity to build a set, they always commit to building a set one for one. Why wouldn't they use the same colour carpet? Why wouldn't they use the same artwork on the walls? Because they have the best source material. And I think Neil Druckmann even said, like, when they did the Scar whistles, they got the Naughty Dog sound team to liaise with the HBO sound team and re-record some of the bits, but almost give them that language of the Scar whistles one for one. And it's just, I think the quality shines through this show. Having Neil alongside Craig with one hand on the wheel has been the best thing the show could have ever had.
They talked in the podcast about something like they were kind of going through the edit of one scene, and then they had this like deep, low rumble and went, they tell each other, that was an amazing decision. It's like, we didn't put that in. It was like someone a few doors down doing working on a different episode. So they went over, got that audio thing and actually put it in.
Yeah.
Because apparently whatever it was just reverberated.
Yeah.
They must have been like doing recording the sound effects and just reverberated through the building.
And that's where you've got that hum from now. So yeah, it's interesting. I love how they adapt and the tweaks and stuff. And I think having two leads on this has really shown, like, you've got one to hone it in, one who really knows the game. Craig did say one thing that was wrong, which I caught up on, where he said about Dina getting shot in the leg. And he said in the podcast, like, well, in the game, Ellie gets shot in the leg, and obviously she just gets on and cracks on with it. In this show, Ellie getting hit in the leg, she'd be out for the count. She wouldn't be able to pursue Abby. She won't be able to walk properly. She gets shot in the shoulder in the game, Craig. Just going to point that out to you. She gets shot in the shoulder when she gets attacked by scars. But that's just me being particular. But that's it for this week's episode of the ClickerCast, of course. Run along to the comments. Leave something there for the algorithm. Stalker us on social media from the top of those barrels with your creepy cat eyes at GamerGuild TV. Clicker that notification bell. And blow to yourself and all of our other amazing content. But above all else, everyone, endure and survive. My name's been Chris.
And I've been Richie.
We've been the ClickerCast for GamerGuild TV, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.